Yeah, you've seen this before. This is the input-output machine thing. And so there's two skills that we're looking at. One is you're handed a table that's got the input numbers but not the output numbers, but you're being told what the expression is. You're being told what the formula is. And so that's a simple one of just plugging it in. So when 1 is the end, 1 times 2 is 2, plus 3 is 5. 2 gets plugged in. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 3 is 7. And so it's just a simple matter of plugging in the number and getting the next table. So this is going to carry on. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 3 is 9. Right there we now can see how the pattern is going to work going down, so you can even just fill in the rest that way. But that's how you plug the numbers in. So that's a pretty simple one. It's an input-output table. You're given the inputs. They're always usually just 1 to 5, but sometimes they're not. You're given inputs, and you just plug them into the formula you're provided. Now, the slightly more complicated thing is when you're given this second one over here. And the second one is different because, yeah, we've been given the inputs, but we've also been given the outputs, but we have not been given the formula. So we have to figure the formula out, and that's what we sort of stumbled into doing yesterday anyways. When we were trying to turn our equations into stories, we used this as a way of turning into the stories. So I'm going to start on a fairly, if you've got one that's really tough, how you start doing this is just look at the very first one. The very first one is a 1 that's been turned into a 2. You might think, okay, how can I get from 1 to 2? Well, I'm going to try adding 1. That would work. 1 plus 1 would give me 2. 1 plus 1 gives me 2. That works for this one. So if I think my rule is plus 1, I got to try it on my next one. 2 plus 1 is 3. Doesn't work for that one. So you can sort of do that trial and error thing. So I'm going to try something different now. How can I get from 1 to 2? I could times by 2. So 1 times 2 is 2. That always works for the first one because that's how I made it up. 2 times 2 is, not 5. So the rules of thinking that I'm adding 1 or thinking that I'm timesing by 2, which in our equation would have been, if we were writing expressions, would have been n plus 1 or 2n, those both now do not work. So we go to the skill that we practiced yesterday when we were trying to make up stories. And we look for a pattern going this way. And what we see with that pattern is that we're going up by 3s each time. And when we're going up by 3s, that tells us we're repeatedly adding 3. Repeatedly adding 3 is timesing by 3. So that tells us that our equation is going to involve times by 3. Now 1 times 3 is not 2. So 1 times 3 is 3. So it must have been 1 times 3 is 3. To get to 2, I would take away 1. Is that going to work for all of them? We go down to the next one. 2 times 3, looking right here, 2 times 3 is 6, minus 1, yes, that was 5. It works for the first one, it works for the second one. You will come across patterns, more complicated ones, maybe not today, that can work for the first two, but don't work for the third. So it's a good idea to check the third. 3 times 3 is 9, minus 1 is 8. Yeah, it works for all three. This must be the equation, the expression that goes with that